My dad is the most brilliant man that I know. He's from a small country in Western Africa called Sierra Leone, and if you've never met my dad before, he's like Mufasa from The Lion King, right? Which makes me Simba. I'll be king one day. I'll never forget a moment when I was 14 years old, and I came home from school after a particularly soul-destroying day of being bullied. And I went to my dad. I said, "Dad, I'm too small to make a difference in this world. I'm done trying." And I went to my room and I slammed the door. And I marinated in my teen angst. That's what teenagers do, right? And immediately afterward, my dad called out to me in a voice that I can do pretty well by now. He said, "Shola." You think I'm playing? That's how my dad talks. That's what I hear in my head. "Shola, come here, boy. We need to talk." And what my dad said next changed my life forever. He said, "Shola, whenever you think that you're too small to make a difference, try to fall asleep with a mosquito in the room." Look, I'm 14 years old, right? So I'm sitting here like, "Dad, I'm struggling. You're giving me African riddles. Come on, Dad." Undeterred, my dad continued. He said, "Shola, listen to me, boy. When you sleep, the mosquito buzzes by your ear. Shall I clap with your hands? Shall I grab with your fist? Stomp it under your foot. Can you sleep peacefully, boy, when the mosquito buzzes by your ear?" I'm like, "No, Dad. I'm always trying to swat it and grab it." "See, Shola, even though the mosquito is small, it knows it can make a difference on things far greater than he. Go forth, boy. Be the mosquito." And he walked out of the room. Now, this may sound strange to you, but you have no idea how much I wanted to be a mosquito when I grew up. I mean, not literally, that's kind of weird, right? But figuratively speaking, to have something bigger than myself to live towards, to work toward, it's been a dream of mine ever since my dad shared that story with me. Little did I know that I would need to lean on my dad's wisdom the most during the darkest period of my life. 14 years ago, while working in a deeply toxic and abusive workplace, I tried to kill myself. If I could explain why I did it, why I tried, it's due to the fact I felt deeply disconnected from my fellow human beings. I just couldn't understand why people could be so mean, so cruel, so hateful. And as much as I wanted to be the mosquito, this was far bigger than anything I had encountered up to this point. As I was thinking about this and struggling in the months that followed, and I tried to rebuild myself in the way that I work, live, and lead, the way out of my darkness was gratefully illuminated by a single word: Ubuntu. Ubuntu is an African word that means I am because we are. And it refers to the power of our shared humanity, rooted in kindness, compassion, and interconnectedness. Can you imagine if our global philosophy followed this? If there's literally no place where I end and you begin, how would that change how you show up to work? How you treat your neighbors, how you led others? I honestly believe this word has the power to change the world. But I get it. You might be thinking, listen, there's no place for this fluffiness in the harsh world of business, leadership, and life. And to that I say, okay, let's talk about harsh stuff. I'm sure everyone in this room can remember in our country's recent history when natural disasters like floods, hurricanes, and fires have ravaged entire communities. I'm certain you remember times when innocent men, women, and school children were gunned down in a mass shooting. And I'm certainly sure that everyone here remembers where they were on September 11, 2001. What you might not remember, though, is what happened immediately after that. Strangers rush in to save other strangers. Whenever lives are on the line, that happens invariably. But to be clear, I'm not talking about trained first responders. Just average people like you and me putting our lives on the line to help our fellow humans. And before reaching out to lend a helping hand, the old divisions that we cling to disappear. You never see someone when they reach in to help someone when their lives are on the line. It's like, hey, are you a Republican or Democrat? What are your thoughts on same-sex marriage? Never. Because when the stakes are the highest, our default mode is preserving our shared humanity. I am, because we are. That is Ubuntu. So yeah, if we can do it when the stakes are the highest, why can we apply the same wisdom to how we work, how we live, and how we lead? Fair warning though, this is more than just believing in our shared humanity. We're at the point now where we have to be willing to fight for it. I'd like to talk about how we do this. The first of three things I'd like to cover is how we work with Ubuntu. Strangely enough, and I believe this to be true, everyone deserves a kind, compassionate, and connected workplace, but sadly, that is not the case. One of the main reasons why is on the screen behind me. This is the definition, or a definition, of workplace bullying. Repeated and unreasonable behaviors intended to humiliate, intimidate, undermine, or harm an employee or a group of employees. According to the most recent national survey from the Workplace Bullying Institute, 60 million Americans are affected by workplace bullying. 60 million. Think about that. Besides destroying things like productivity, morale, creativity, trust, and anything else that's meaningful in the workplace, it also destroys lives. 14 years ago, I was almost one of them. In order to honor our shared humanity in the spirit of Ubuntu, we need to protect our shared humanity. And I'd like to propose a place that we can start. Something that every workplace in America should have as a starting point. An anti-bullying policy. To be clear, I'm not talking about a couple of sentences that are nestled away in some larger policy, never to be found again when you need it. I'm talking about a standalone policy that clearly details the behaviors, the abusive behaviors that you consider to be unacceptable, and the consequences that should be leveled against anyone who's in violation of this policy. Most importantly, it needs to be strictly enforced at all levels of the organization. Do not underestimate the power of this. Does your workplace have this? Here's the thing. In this day and age, I feel like we should honestly view workplaces without an anti-bullying policy the same way that we should view a workplace without a working restroom. Seriously, can you imagine? Think about your first day of work. You walk in, like, hey, do you have a restroom I can use? Yeah, about that. We don't have a restroom here. Wait, what? So, what am I supposed to do if an issue happens to arise, Stop being so dramatic, okay? All this talk about needing a restroom to do your job effectively. Just do what everyone else out there does. Keep the issue to yourself, or better yet, learn how to hold it in so you don't make a mess everywhere. That's ridiculous! Can we agree? Ridiculous! There's only one thing more ridiculous than that. If you take the word restroom out of that scenario and replace it with anti-bullying policy, that is the very real reality facing millions of employed Americans on a daily basis. This is not okay. Workplaces and organizations need to honor and protect our shared humanity, and it requires courage and, dare I say, integrity. And on that note, let me say this. If there's a workplace out there that has the word integrity in its mission, vision, and values, but does not have a system in place to protect those employees when they're in danger, they should voluntarily rip the word integrity out of their mission, vision, and values so they can actually demonstrate that they know what the word means. If your employees are your most important asset, then it's time to start acting like it. I am because we are Ubuntu means that we value our employees and keep them safe at all times. Secondly, I'd like to shift gears from work and talk about how we live with Ubuntu. Global communications firm Weber Chanwick, in partnership with Powell Tate and KRC Research, has an amazing annual survey called Civility in America. The most recent version found that 93% of Americans believe that we have a civility problem and an incivility problem. Think about it. It's everywhere. It's in our schools, our neighborhoods, social media, even in our homes. But here's where it gets weird. In that same survey, 2 years prior, they found that 94% of Americans believe that they're usually polite and respectful, or always polite and respectful. So wait a second. The overwhelming majority of Americans think that we have an incivility problem, but even a larger majority believes that they have nothing to do with that problem. Worded differently, there has never been a drop of rain that believes that it is responsible for the flood. My friends, we are the raindrop. It can't be everyone else. My hope is that we think about this and mindfully be kinder, more compassionate, and more connected. However, what about the people who don't want to connect with others? What about the people who view kindness and compassion as weakness? Are you willing to stand up for a shared humanity? Wouldn't it be so much easier to be silent? For example, at the Thanksgiving dinner table, if Aunt Karen decides to spew racist and bigoted remarks in front of your kids, are you going to excuse it away by saying, well, she's on her third glass of rosé? Or do you stand up and say that our comments are not welcome in your home? Our neutrality and our silence is failing us. In order to live with Ubuntu, I am because we are, let me be clear, not being a racist is not good enough. Not being a misogynist is not good enough. Not being a homophobe is not good enough. The only way we can share our humanity effectively is when we stand up against anything or anyone that is actively trying to divide and separate us. What we allow is what will continue. Is this scary? Yeah, of course it is. But to allow hate and divisiveness to grow and spread while we sit passively on the sidelines should be so much scarier. I am because we are means that we stand up for our fellow humans, and knowing that when we do so, we will never stand alone. And finally, how we choose to lead with the spirit of Ubuntu. I want you to think of a leader, any leader that you've ever worked with or ever followed. It could be a coach, pastor, politician, your current boss. And let me ask you this very simple question, if you have this person in your mind right now. If that person did not have his or her authority over you, would you still choose to follow that person anyway? To me, that question or your answer tells me everything about someone's ability to lead with kindness, compassion, and connectedness. And to lead with Ubuntu, you don't need a title. Having a badge that says coach, manager, director, pastor, whatever, makes you a leader just as much as me going out to the local mall, buying a Los Angeles Lakers jersey, putting that on my chest, makes me a professional basketball player. To lead with Ubuntu means people follow you because they choose to, not because they have to. And the easiest way to make that happen is by saying, I will go first, by leading with kindness, connection, and compassion. I often have leaders, ostensibly, who challenge me on this. They say, well, listen, Shola, leadership's hard, man. It's hard, all right? Sometimes you gotta discipline people. You gotta hold them accountable. You tell me I can't hold people accountable now? Sometimes you gotta fire people. Ever thought about that, Shola, huh? I'm like, yeah, I have. Of course leadership is hard. Disciplining people is hard. Holding them accountable is hard. Firing them when appropriate is hard. But you know what? If you're a leader and you can't do those hard things with compassion, kindness, and connectedness, then perhaps you should not be leading other humans. The reason why this matters so much this is about our legacy. In our actions, do we lead with kindness and compassion and connectedness, or do we do the opposite? And I can promise you this. Our legacy is the mandatory work that is due on the day that we die. And on the day that we die, we will know Ubuntu. If you've ever had the honor of looking in the eye of someone who's on their deathbed, no one says, hey, can you pull the PhD off the wall? I want to look at the frame one last time, see the curvature of the calligraphy. No, of course not. What they do is they honor their shared humanity in their final moments, kindness, compassion, interconnectedness. Those are the things that matter most. I know this personally too well. 8 months ago, my beloved dad passed away. And this is a picture of me holding his hand in our final moments together. I can promise you something. What we did in these moments is we honored our shared humanity. We shared kindness, compassion, interconnectedness. My dad, though, my dad's one of the lucky ones. He lived every single day as an example of what it means to lead with Ubuntu. In a sense, I'm one of the lucky ones too. I shouldn't even be here. And because of that, I'm also a cautionary tale. I am sharing with you as your faithful mosquito. If you wait until the specter of death is staring you in the face to decide now I'll live with kindness, compassion, and connectedness, it may be too late. The world needs us now to begin this important work. We don't have the luxury to wait. I am because we are. And if we choose to elevate humanity, because we are, we can change how we work, how we live, and how we lead together. The circle of life continues. Ubuntu, and thank you.